All right, let's call the meeting to order. And, where's your little thing? Okay.
I got a little thing.
And, no, there's no members of the public here. Make sure that all cell phones and electronic devices be turned off or in a mute position as not to disturb the meeting. Any member, we don't have any members of the public. No. Okay. Audio video equipment established by the chair so as not to interfere with the meeting. The chair is required to inform other attendees of such recording at the beginning of the meeting. There's no other recordings other than Mr. White. So let's move forward and Kelly, you've got a roll call.
I remember.
There's no citizens participation because we only have Bob back there. Okay. The first order of business is, it was requested that we did a little bit more further discussion of the 2012 year-end appropriation transfers. And I think everyone got a copy of the letter that was sent to us by the Director of Accounts from DOR, from Mr. Perry. I don't know if you all had a chance to read it yet, but I guess our friend here got his hand slapped. So, do you have any comments about the letter from Gary?
It pretty much reads the way my reading of it. The law apparently was incorrect, but we reached out to the DOR. We've reached out to them beforehand. Got in touch with them and spoke to our rep, who would then forward it to another department to make sure what their reading would be. And they said that the transfers should be in the 3% to $5,000 range per department. So any one department that you have, you can't go over 3% of 5,000, whichever is greater.
Is that cumulatively or collectively for their entire budget, or?
Yeah, that's for their entire budget. So
okay.
From them, we can't sit out there. We are going to have, I believe, August 13th. We're meeting Mr. Foster, the town accountant, assistant town accountant, myself, the head of assessing. We'll be meeting with our DOR local rep, Jerry Curtis, and they will educate us on these matters.
Okay.
No selectmen?
They didn't request it.
And they didn't request any FinCom people?
No, the ones I listed off were the specific requests from them. I don't know if that's the true education time or if that's just the meeting of us all getting together on there.
Okay.
So you're going to get schooled.
If I may have,
Yes, sir.
I understand what they're saying, but there's also the fact that basically the people that are invited to the meeting have no authority on this to begin with. All right, it's really the selectmen and the FinCom that were put in a very ugly position. All right, and because we didn't know and we didn't have, the information that we should have had. So I don't know if I'm satisfied with this. I'm not trying to make a meeting for us to have to attend to, but I would imagine that even more than this is going to come up in their education. And I think it's about time we were educated. All right, so I hope if they want to have a handshaking meeting on the 13th, that's great. But I really think that we need to get some straight proof.
I concur. I agree 100% that we should have. I don't understand why a representative from the Board of Selectmen and at least a representative from the FinCom be here.
To Mr. Heath's comment, this is the second year that we've watched the merry-go-round travel. And I understand the turmoil at the administrative staff in town that handles the budget, but indeed, Mr. Heath is correct. I'd like to be a little more prepared. That's why I'm looking at the word collectively, cumulatively for their budget, and perhaps one of the same being invited to some of those seminars, if it's possible.
Can you check that out to see if we've been sent a member of FinCom?
If I may, I don't think you should be represented, I think you should all be invited. We're the ones that are casting the vote, so we're the ones that are accountable. All right, now whether or not individuals decide to attend or not, I think that we all should be there to hear directly from the source's mouth what we're supposed to be doing. And we don't have to drive to Boston to do it or anything else.
Exactly, it's right here.
Through you.
Donald?
If, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I'm gonna give this a shot, if the education is to ensure that we're never put into that position again, if that's what's going to happen at this meeting, to make sure that we don't come to the point where we have to vote on a transfer that's illegal, then I understand the concept of we really don't need to be there. Because this is about you guys, and I say you guys, I mean the line force, if you will, doing what they're supposed to do so we don't end up in that position again. Because, just my opinion, the next time it comes in here, the answer is no. Because we should never ever make this mistake again, ever. And so if the education is for us, well, I can understand it's really not for us because we're not the ones that are making the entries or doing the reviews of the information to make sure it doesn't happen, and it should go before a town meeting. So I understand the concept here, what they're educating them so this doesn't occur again. But I also understand if we have even the option of going, I think it's a good idea for us to go, because then we understand what happens if we don't do it and what happens if we do it. And that makes sense to me as well. But again, I don't know that educating us on the process is going to solve anything. It's educating the people doing the work so that doesn't occur again.
I disagree with you, Mr. McDonald. Only, I concur with Mr. Heath because we are the ones that are charged with, we did the vote. If we hadn't voted the way we had, it wouldn't have gone through illegal. So I believe that the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee should be held accountable. And I think we should be educated to know what to do the next time, the right thing to do, because we're the ones that live in this town.
If I might?
Certainly.
I see your point, but, you know, we argued for monthly statements, so we have an idea of where we were and what was going on. This is the second year it's happened. It's embarrassing that it's happened to us. I think the chair is correct. When we say we want monthly reports, and we say that, this is the second time an event has occurred. I don't want to be in that position next year. I'd like to know on the front end in May, when I'm beginning to look at some problems in some of these budgets. And I understand, Derek, that when somebody comes into you on the 27th of June with a bill, it's a little difficult to deal with it. But we're not getting those monthly reports. And 2 years in a row, Larry, I just think it's an awful scorecard for us. What the selectmen do.
Yes,
Well,
Mr. Heath?
Mr. Heath beat me up first.
First, I'm going to go back to the same thing as David said. This was not a new subject. However, we did this year have 2 new members of the committee, right, who were unfamiliar with what happened with last year. We also had Mr. Foster, who was not the town administrator. Mr. Sullivan did happen to be a repeat. And we also had a new town accountant. So when we sat there to do the vote the other night, how many people in the room were familiar with what happened in the prior year and what the law read and what conversations had been previously held? I would tell you there was only 2 of us, Mr. Sullivan and myself. And the law could, I will admit, be read differently. All right? And we did not have legal opinions available to us either from our own counsel, right, or the Department of Revenue in time. I said, put the thing to bed. Quite frankly, and it becomes also a continuity type thing that if we have people who have 1, 2, 3-year terms left, and the 3-year people that are there are not going to forget this for the next 2 years and advise new people coming on board, and we'll have more credibility there. When we came into the other night, last week was a situation where, 2 weeks ago, people did not know or were not sure enough or could not quote authorities that said, this is what you can and can't do. All right, now, there was a statement made last year when it was done, don't do this again. Well, it went the same way most things that we do. It's like spitting in the wind.
Mr. McDonald?
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but, and I was one of the ones that voted for it, and had I thought it through or had a little more knowledge, I probably wouldn't have. And I agree that but educating us on how to vote is different than educating them so that it doesn't happen again. What they're basically, what I'm getting from this is they're going to say this, they're going to go to this and learn how to be proactive, and maybe we should too. I'm not saying we shouldn't go, but it seems to me that we wouldn't, if they are taught the correct way to handle these problems, it should never come to our attention again. Now, I'm not saying it won't, but if it's handled properly in the line force, then we're not going to have to deal with that situation again next year. But again, I'm not against going and learning more, because anything we learn is just benefit to us. But I wonder sometimes if at some point in time, no matter how much we learn, if we're faced with that situation next year, it means that the people that are actually doing the work didn't learn. So that's really what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir, Mr.
I'm going to go back to Mr. Trudell's point. It's our responsibility, not theirs. Our job is to make sure that what they bring before us is correct.
I don't disagree, but
Okay, so
you're
I
missing my point.
stand by my point, that we're the ones that should have been educated, right? When they came up with the idea of the concept, we should have been able to, if nothing else, sit with them and give them some guidance, because we were the ones that are held responsible for the Chapter 44. I will also point out to you that the letter also addresses another issue, which has to do with emergency appropriations, for which letters have to be issued. One was done, the letter was signed. The second one was not done, and the letter was not signed, so we were held accountable for that as well. So the question is, what other things are sitting out there, emergency situations, et cetera, that we should know about, especially since we're in charge of the reserve fund? I'm sorry, I think that there's a need for this committee to be educated directly by the DOR when they meet with our personnel who are responsible to prepare the paperwork for us so that we can make the decision. It's that simple.
I'm not disagreeing.
That's like saying the manager is responsible if the door isn't unlocked, so therefore we can't have the meeting. Doesn't work.
Yes, sir.
I think we thoroughly flogged this horse. Could
Yes.
it be possible that Derek's been listening to this, we could have that discussion with the acting town administrator?
Get that to me?
Then we could
Yeah.
put this to bed.
And
Good.
people in the administration come and go.
Derek.
Not disagreeing with that either.
You know, they come and go, so we should as a board be educated.
I'm not saying we shouldn't, I'm just saying that if that is done correctly, we didn't face that situation. And I think what I got from this letter was that they're educating them on how to properly do this, so we don't end up in that position. And yeah, we're held accountable, but in general, it's the whole town that's held accountable, not just us.
Okay.
I want to check, I really have to object,
Okay.
and inject one more item, okay?
What?
For my learned colleague. The people who came here the other night to make the presentation had been directed the evening before by their bosses, the Board of Selectmen, to find a way to make it compatible for the FinCom to approve. So don't blame them. Blame the Board of Selectmen. They're the ones who told them to find a way around. They voted in an aggregate and refused to address the issues. Technically, we shouldn't even have been voting the other night, because they didn't vote on transfers individually. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, I'm looking at
Can you tell my learned colleague I agree with them? I'm not gonna argue with them on
No,
it.
okay, we've slogged the horse long enough,
Yeah.
and David would say, let's move on, and I think it's crystal clear what the FinCom wants. Derek? Okay, the Quinn bill.
Ooh, I thought we were gonna talk about FEMA first. Is that it? Oh,
Is that
no.
different? No,
No.
actually, I'm on the reserve fund. Actually, the 2013 reserve fund transfer to Upper Cape Cod technical budget line. I guess we're wondering, does that have to go before the town meeting? What's the status of that?
Before this went before the selectmen, the chairman of the board of selectmen, through email contacted our town council and asked if this was okay. The response was yes on there. Through the last meeting, you requested me to get an actual written opinion on that. Not in a smart alecky manner or anything. Town council had responded that instead of a written legal opinion, if there's great concern as to whether this is an issue, take it in front of town meeting in fall, rather than creating an issue when there might not be one on there. When we'd had discussions, and again, he didn't write an opinion, and I am the same man that spoke in favor of transfers a couple weeks ago, so I don't know how much my words carry, but when we had spoken about it, he said, the question was, are you going against a vote of town meeting if you put that money back in? Right, that was the real concern. Town meeting voted that that's a lesser amount. And his thought had been, well, when you originally accepted the regionalization, you had to vote that as town meeting. And part of those provisions of that was that if all the other member communities voted to accept the budget, we were beholden to that number. So you start saying, well, did we go against town meeting vote at our last town meeting? Well, you didn't, because they hadn't all voted yet. So the long way about is you should be able to vote it out of your reserve fund. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, we do have fall town meeting coming up. It's paid quarterly, so we do have enough money to make the first payments.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Wasn't that vote contingent upon the other towns approving the lesser amount? No?
Not to my memory, it was not stipulated. Those of us sitting on the stage all knew what was going to happen,
Yes.
okay? And that's why we tucked it away in the piggy bank. But I don't believe anywhere on the floor of the town meeting was it said, oh, but if they say no, we'll just take it right back up.
Thanks.
Alan?
For those of us who were sitting on the floor watching you people on the stage, I think the points were made quite clearly that it was a contractual obligation. That point was brought up that we might be obligated to pay when the other towns had voted, so that people are aware of how it works. It was a budget item that was voted down as part of the budget, so that's...
There's a contingency too.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, Mr. McDonald?
I believe that we'd have to go back and look at the wording of the actual motion, because I believe the word contingency was used, because if they did, no?
If I may, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
I had an opportunity to talk to the town moderator, and that's one of the problems, is the amendment to the original motion did not have a contingency clause in it. However, I know that when we talked about moving money over to the reserve account, there was discussion, the fact that it was being put there in case the other towns did in fact vote that way. However, it was not included in the motion.
If I may, I do think that we had to explain why suddenly the reserve account was 320,000 and change instead of the 100,000. But that wasn't part of the motion.
Unfortunately.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
It would be my feeling that where town meeting likes transparency, that we hold it until town meeting and vote it at that time, let the floor vote it back, because then they can show exactly how it has to be reinstituted back into the budget and what those sorts of numbers mean.
I don't have a problem with that. I think the only problem I do have is what if the town meeting doesn't vote it in and we still have to pay it?
You're going to pay it. It doesn't matter question of voting it.
We're going to look a little bad if we go directly against their vote.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But you had no option.
Well, we have no option, right?
What happens then? Upper Cape sues them for breach of contract?
No, it's state we should pay, come on.
Yeah, exactly. We have to pay.
We have to
I think they reduced our local aid by that amount.
Oh, okay, no. So, I mean, I don't see I don't see the point in bringing it back before town meeting, but if the board feels that way, I'm more than willing to go the way of the board.
I'm not inclined to go in that direction.
I'm not either. Can we weigh in and get a vote maybe on how you just want to go?
When does this have to be paid by again?
After the first quarter, isn't it?
Well, we would have enough, theoretically have enough money to cover 3 of the quarters. It would only be the last quarter that you'd be short on there, but you've only got 2 town meetings, so.
I see the downside either way, but I think if we're going to bring it before town meeting and we present it as a housekeeping matter pursuant to what happened, and we can put it forward, and if we're all unanimous on it, then
I think
There
I
shouldn't
can
be any
accept that
debate.
concept as a housekeeping
yeah,
measure.
you know, it's a housekeeping measure because when we voted it down in the spring,
So that'll give us another warrant article.
we didn't have all the information.
Right.
Yes,
It
sir.
was a housekeeping article
Back then, it was, yeah.
and it got amended. Well, that's the other problem. And there will be people that are gonna be pretty
It's just gonna,
agitated
it's gonna-
to the next time.
it's gonna, yeah, they're gonna be agitated one way or the other.
Yes.
And I'd like to have a vote on how people want to do this, because I just want to get it off our plates and,
Well, I'll make a motion to present it at town meeting for transfer back to the Upper Cape Regional Fund.
For purpose of discussion, I'll make a second on that.
okay? And discussion? Anybody have any discussion, any further discussion on that?
Who's missing? We still have committee members not here,
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, we just,
I'm sorry, but somebody stood up on that town meeting floor to make a point, okay? We understood that, it was to send a message to Upper Cape Regional. That, I think the message was sent, everybody had their little say on it, so I think it would be best to present it right back in the public forum of, this didn't work, now we have to pay it back, we have to transfer the money back to Upper Cape. Back to their budget item. That's my opinion.
yes.
I appreciate your opinion, and further thought, we're not actually asking them to transfer. Where it's the reserve fund, the money's going to come from the reserve fund. So we're actually asking for their blessing. I'm not really even sure what kind of a motion we would end up making. I think it really comes under the category of explanation of what we're doing. So I don't know that it needs to go back before town meeting, because we'll sit through the same 45 minutes of everyone trying to make points of it.
Exactly.
But I appreciate what you're saying about transparency, so maybe this is one of those situations that we spell out how we arrived at this point.
Mr. Heath?
I understand your point too as well, Mr. Fisler, but I think the other side is, I'm concerned that some people will take it as a message of, well, I voted against it to make a point, or I voted truly against it, what difference did it make? So the next time, I won't vote against it, I'll just have to accept it for whatever it is. And I personally voted for the amendment, because I believe we needed to send a message, okay?
I
But I'm
believe
not-
the same message as well.
Right, but I'm not prepared to go back and raise this as an issue on the floor again, because now it's not a choice. I think it's only going to frustrate people
They're gonna be
severely,
confused and
and
frustrated.
hopefully not to the point that the next time it comes up with a spring meeting, the villagers vote yes, because they figure there's nothing they can do about it. And in fact, there is something they can do about it.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Trudell.
Everybody's got a lot of good points. I like the housekeeping side, I like the motion. but I think we could accomplish the same based on what she said about the reserve fund. If we put a footnote to some of the financial statements that they're going to be looking, or just a footnote out on one of our statements that says, reserve fund was reduced by this much due to an assessment from Upper Cape. And your conversation, one-line statement, and then there's no vote, there's nothing, it's just, we did what we had to do.
I have a question.
Yes.
Many of us here are all sticklers for the law or the description of what the reserve fund is, et cetera, okay? So how can you simply justify paying the bill back to Upper Cape out of the reserve fund if it doesn't meet the criteria?
Okay?
Yes, Mr. Heath?
It does meet the criteria because it's actually by the law, we have to pay it. It's like when the state comes back to us and says, look, there's charges for, to the town clerk's office for the elections. We have to pay it. That meets the criteria. This is the same thing. We're being told 4 other towns voted for it. Part of our communal agreement is that we have to pay it, right? And the only place that we can pay it is out of that fund.
Let's
It
hope,
is, I think it does meet the criteria. I really do.
unless you've got something new to add to this conversation, I'm going to.
Well, just the only new thing I have is when somebody needs a transfer from the reserve fund, they come to the FinCom. And so why do we need to go back to town meeting? The money was put in the reserve with the concept that here we are. So it's our duty or our responsibility, if you want to go on that route, to make this decision. And that's just my feeling on it.
All right, I'm going to call for a motion on Bonnie.
No.
I mean, I'm going to call for a vote, I'm sorry.
What was the motion?
On Bonnie's wants to bring it back to town. Do you want to read the motion, Kelly?
It's continually moved to present the reserve fund transfer to Upper Cape Cod budget line item at the fall town meeting.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Aye.
All right.
Abstentions.
Any abstentions, I'm sorry? You abstain too? Okay.
Would you entertain a new motion?
Oh, yes, I would entertain a new
You
motion.
want to get I don't know what, it was
What
one,
was
two,
There was 1 in favor,
Five.
and 1, 2, 3,
4,
4,
5.
5. Yes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the transfer. How much was it?
And the motion would be out of order because we don't have the transfer in front of us.
Well, we need a transfer in order to do it. Okay, that's fine.
But we could ask, you could make a motion to ask that it be presented at the next meeting.
I make a motion that the transfer be presented at the next meeting.
Second?
Any discussion?
Is the clerk able to produce such a document
Certainly.
for the next meeting?
Certainly.
Magic time.
Let's get it right here.
For mine.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll
6-0.
bring it up next time,
That was fast.
wasn't it? All right, now we move down to the Quinn bill. Now, the committee, has the committee had a meeting yet, or no? They haven't.
Yes, I'll say.
Is someone going to call the meeting?
I'm not on the committee, I'm sorry.
Oh, who's on the committee? You?
I got it right. Hang on a second.
And Tom?
I know Tom was. Marilyn and Tom. And Bonnie, was it?
No, it's Dave, isn't it?
I'm one of the guys here.
All right.
We might have to
Let's
appoint a
see.
chairman. Appoint a chairman.
Quinn bill study is Marilyn, Tom, David,
Yes.
to review the original town meeting with the options from may opt out. So we need, I guess,
Well, David, I'm going to appoint a chair to that committee, and I'm going to appoint you. So I expect by the next meeting you have called a subcommittee.
We'll have a meeting and a report.
Marilyn, are you on the website now?
I will be, yes.
You want her or you want her?
I'll be tomorrow.
Oh, okay. I'm assuming Tom is.
On what?
Whoops.
I was having trouble the last meeting, so I don't know.
I made I keep, let's not forget the open meeting law, make sure that you understand all subcommittee meetings are public.
Correct.
Okay?
So you can't meet in
Two,
Maryland's
there's a
kitchen.
quorum, so you gotta be careful. Right?
You can't meet in Maryland's kitchen.
No, well, you can't.
We
You
can,
just
I just
have
have
to
to invite the
public.
general public.
Exactly.
You clean before you bite them over.
She's got a nice kitchen too, roomy.
Okay,
Is the voting in this building?
no,
next door.
it's the next
town
door.
hall.
You're kidding me.
No, it's in
The guy
the,
just told me it was in this building.
no, it's in the main town hall.
Didn't want you to vote.
Okay, Derek provided us with
Like my dad?
a specific accounting of MEMA and FEMA reimbursements. And I think in our package, he did that.
Do we know what some of these sub-items were? Is there any clue?
That would be, I wouldn't be able to speak on that, we'd have to go to Mr. Gifford and or the town accountant and to speak about those. This was the, and if I misinterpreted, I apologize, this is how it was all broken down, and that's to what department got what. So I guess the next request would be, would be what they actually, the actual items on there with the invoices and such.
What they asked for, this is what they
Here's,
got.
through the chair, if I may.
Yes.
If I was doing an analysis, and believe me, this is what we're looking for, we need to know what was submitted and what was paid. Now, because we know there wasn't a 75% in reimbursement of the total amount that was submitted. And I'm not sure that we need it broken down as far as each individual item, but if you can break it down to lumps like you've got here, personnel, equipment, materials, if you know what was submitted, not what was paid, but what was submitted, and then match it up to what was paid, we'll have a better understanding of why it went awry. Because it's clear to me after where we talked last week that several things were submitted that weren't reimbursed. And that's a concern of mine, is that's the first concern. If they're not being reimbursed, were the departments aware of those before they submitted them, or did they just try to pass one through? I'm not saying they did, but that's a possibility. The other part of that is the way you broke down the payment. I'm assuming this is how you took that payment and applied it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, this is a worksheet from the assistant town accountant that she put together really for her own informational, and just so people are listening, the first column is what 100% of the reimbursement would have been. The second column is the actual 75%. But you're right, there should be additional requests beyond this. This is just what FEMA said, okay, they would allow,
Right.
and then you reduce that by 7 to 75%.
So if you added another column over here and said what was actually submitted, then we would have a better idea, because it appears to me that she broke this down, but whose authority was it that said, okay, well, the police get this much, the municipal maintenance gets this much, the harbor master? Did somebody go back through? Because that's what we don't know. And if you put that other column out there, we'll have a better idea. And we know how you applied the money, now we want to know what it was applied against. All right, does that make sense? Am I wrong?
Are we looking for submitted, approved, 75%?
I guess, but you know what, I really submitted, approved, 75% sounds, I mean,
So you're saying one more column here. and
that's
25%.
reasonable, but I still don't understand. I want to make sure I understand that the 75% approved, well, never mind, we'll get that from the next report. We'll just go one step at a time.
Yeah,
No.
let's get it first.
Marilyn?
Why?
Because we had a substantial difference between what was submitted and what was actually approved.
Okay.
So,
But I guess, what's the exercise? What are we trying to prove by doing this?
what I'm trying to figure out, first off, is why. I will not prove, but I'd like to understand why someone submitted. How much more did we submit than what was approved? It was a significant number.
Yeah, that's-
And I
It's
guess,
not reflecting here.
I guess For a practical point of view, if you know they're only going to give you 75%, you're going to submit anything you think you can get away with so that you get as much back as you possibly can.
Well, that's why they sat in here and asked for transfers. And that's a problem I have, because that means not only did they went out and procure whatever it was, whether it was hourly salaries, whether it was equipment or stuff, they procured it with the thought process that this is what FEMA's gonna reimburse us for, and FEMA didn't reimburse us. So I wanna make sure we don't do this again, because the next hurricane
All
comes
right,
on.
so that's the answer to my question, because really what I'm saying is why are we sitting here nitpicking these numbers? That looks like it's a more departmental issue. Is it really an issue that we need to
Yeah.
look at in committee here?
Bonnie, you were up first.
Well, I know what Mr. McDonald's getting at. I would be more interested in what they disallowed and what.
That's the same
Okay.
thing.
Yeah,
That's
That's
what, you know, if some
Yeah.
word you're
Yeah.
using, maybe it's not what's understood, but yeah, I would like to know what it was they disallowed and why. What was it that we purchased, or what procedure did we go through in this middle of this
Exercise.
disaster that we probably should not do again?
That's what I'm asking.
Exactly.
Thank
Good.
you.
Yes.
Yeah, so in the middle of the winter at the MMA conference, they had a section that we discussed emergencies. All right, and the training that town administrators had to have, and town accountants, et cetera, beyond the emergency services. Because when MEMA and FEMA come in, they're looking for contracts, they're looking for the various things that they will and will not allow, and some of it's based on the issuance of purchase orders, et cetera. The great emphasis that day was you have to train your people who are not the emergency services, because, you know, add the town accountant to your emergency team, otherwise you will not be reimbursed. So one of the questions we might see here is things that we could have been reimbursed if our process had been correct. If our process was wrong, it would have been rejected. Yeah, and then sort of needlessly.
Yes.
All of these are outstanding points, but I guess I have a question for Derek through you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Was there a lesson learned document, okay, that told department heads where they crashed into the Because if there was not a lessons learned, if you will, or a document type that, and those are various department heads, now come next hurricane, they'll duplicate the aforesaid by pulling the file out for the last hurricane, and so did we prepare an analysis of what went wrong for those department heads?
I would say no.
I would expect that.
The two quick things, if I may. One of them is this was actually done mostly by, except for the county, one person was of the police, Lieutenant Walchek, who I took on a huge task to do all this. So that's I just want to make sure that we put it that his work was not effective, so to say. So I just want to make sure that we give some credit on this for the amount.
Whose child is that?
For the amount of work that he did in there. But I do understand what you're saying. And that might be. We also have a hurricane preparedness. I don't know if it's seminar or what have you come in here,
Yes,
which is probably apropos at this point on there. But I would say there was never anything prepared saying that this is what was disallowed. So in the future, don't do that because you won't get it reimbursed on there. There was never anything put together like that. That's a good idea, because why keep on bang your head against the wall. So.
Exactly.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
This is not in my mind, looking for someone to victimize. This is, in my mind, being able to look at what FEMA is saying, look why they're saying, and then somebody is able to say, here, police department, this is what happened and this is where it went wrong. Bang, here, maintenance department, here's what happened and here's where it went wrong. Please file this with your after-action report from last hurricane. Then, if something comes up again, I would think that the Finance Committee would have been briefed on the after-action report, if you will, and we would at least be able to say there's a base back in 2012 where we looked at this problem and department heads were warned, because your answer is telling me we're no more prepared for the next hurricane in terms of, I'm gonna have some of this stuff voided.
That's, to my knowledge, I think you're exactly right.
There we
on
go.
there.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
for risk management and such, one of the other things is what I've just said, is we've had one person that's in charge of that. That person could win the lottery, get a promotion, could be gone.
Yes, Mr.
I
Pierce?
just chime again. The other problem that comes on the emergency stuff, there's procurement law, Mass Chapter 30. And there's also duties and responsibilities of municipal officials, which is Chapter 41, 44 is the finances. As you go through there, all right, everything's supposed to go through a procurement process unless there's an emergency. And if there's an emergency, the selectmen have the power at that point to sign contracts, which is not their normal course of business. All right, so that's, again, one of these things. And we heard when we went to the MMA from two selectmen, and that was one of their problems. For one of them, she had a brand new board, everybody had been there for a year, and suddenly all this stuff got thrown to them, and they didn't know what their responsibilities were. So that could be part of our problem here. It might have happened. I don't know that it did.
It's a start.
We should start and then make sure that we take full advantage of the training, to make sure that we don't get caught up in that, because boy, it's one first thing they said is the dollar implications are very large and you never catch up.
Would it be out of order to ask the chair to request the selectmen to, through the selectmen, the administration to prepare an after-action report in regards to this stuff? That way it becomes a formal request from us. Because my fear is that without a formal request, it may hit the will of the wisp and be gone.
Well, I would suggest that we let Mr. Sullivan give them to the next meeting to provide it with us. If we don't get it, then we go that route.
Well, let's-
No? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I looked at this as a first step, to me. When we get this report, then we have an idea, and they have an idea of where the issue is. Before we get to that, the report you're talking about, I think it behooves us to look at this report. And then for them, also, I'm not looking at just a tool for us, I'm looking at it as a tool for them. I agree with what you're saying, but we need to get to the point. I mean, right now, we got a part of a tool, but we need a tool. And again, I wasn't trying to be, look, this guy went out and bought a hot dog making machine during the middle of this. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is maybe this is a tool for later on, because as Marilyn put it earlier to me, I think hurricane season starts next month. And, here we are.
But we'll never have one up here. This is
Well,
the north.
We're not prepared, and we apparently, from some of the things that have happened, do not learn from our mistakes. So this is our I know, it's hard to believe, but this is an opportunity for us to look at a report and then go to the next step, which is what you're looking for.
Okay. Carolyn?
And I'm going to just jump off of his point. When I asked earlier, my first question was why? Why are we doing this? Obviously, there are good, solid reasons for why we are looking into this, and several things should come of this. I think we should see the rest of the reports and look at the analysis, but at the same time, yeah, we're in hurricane season, and any emergency could happen at any time. I think it's important that we get the response, what did you call it, the
After-action report.
After-action report. It
Lessons
must be a
learned.
military return. What I would like to do is, Donna, I'll just draft a statement for you to nicely send over to the Board of Selectmen, suggesting that that be looked into. And then after we get the actual numbers, we can do it in two steps. We can ask them to get going on the after-action report. At the same time, we can look at the actual numbers, and then we will have concrete information as to what might also be included in that folder. But I don't think we want to just drop it, because it will just get buried.
No,
So
we don't want to drop it.
step one is, a nice comment. And I say nice because we're not looking to put blame. It was a lesson, and fortunately, I don't think it was a hugely expensive lesson like those folks out in Western Mass had to face when the tornadoes blew through and they were unprepared. But we don't want to be unprepared.
You're not covered my point.
Yes, you did. Okay.
She made us all happy.
Okay. All right.
temporarily.
Sunshine.
That can change quickly.
I know.
The next item on our agenda is school transportation. Has anyone heard? Why am I not surprised?
Because my wife's over at the meeting right now, and I've got
Okay.
$40 in my pocket to bail her out if something goes wrong. The last she heard that they were going, and again, I don't know, we'll find out shortly, but the information that was passed on to her is allegedly they're going to stop busing the 7th through 12th graders. And that therein lied the problem is they're gonna bus 6th graders, which are with the 7th and the 8th. So at this point, tonight, the transportation director, or whatever he's called, is going to issue his recommendation at the school meeting. So, and I did take the taser away before she went over there.
Can I ask a question? Yes. I don't know, I was actually hoping that our rep to the school department might be here to find this question out, but to find this answer anyway. Is there a year-round kindergarten?
I believe they have a grant for that.
They have a Head Start one.
Yeah, I thought they had, it used to be 6 months, but I think they got money from the state, but it's all free. To go to a year round.
It will be this year.
Well, I was just wondering, because I saw school buses running around today and little kids getting off them. So that was my
That's a
question.
summer program.
That's a summer program.
A
That's
summer program of what?
Care program.
What is CARE?
My daughter went 1 year. They learn different things. Some are science, some are math. It's to help them. Well, it's not always to help them. It's keep the kids busy too. But to teach them math, to teach them science. Some of them do plays. It's just a summer program the school has done. It's a CARE program.
And how is that paid for?
I don't know. I could get someone to talk to you about it, but I know that my daughter attended it.
I'm just curious, but we're not going to be able to bus our children from September on. Why are their children being bused in the middle of the summer?
I don't know.
I would really be curious to find that out.
Could we run a
I
taxi
do know,
service?
I do know that there are special ed programs that run year-round that pick up
But
children,
thank you.
because my daughter-in-law has one in her daycare. They get picked up. But it's a good point.
Then we wonder why the school budget is over. We wonder what's happening. Is some of this stuff optional?
That's what I'm wondering. How is it being funded?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of regard it as like some of the niceties that you have. You fully funded program, you know, there's a time when you say no. And we don't seem to be there, except for our 7.
Yes,
Those are questions that are under review,
Right.
and most of these are done by grant.
I was gonna say that,
And
yeah.
they are done by grants.
But is the grant paying the transportation department for transporting these children?
Yes.
We would have to ask. I suspect that they might be, the
Yes.
money would be going into the transportation revolver for the repair of buses.
I was just curious of that, because I'm like, well, are we transporting summer school kids? I couldn't understand what buses were doing out
I know they do CARE. My nephew is
in the
going.
middle of July.
I will find out for you.
Yeah.
If I may, Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I want to thank you all for appointing me to the capital planning committee so they could draw straws and tell me I lost. And I'm on the transportation committee, which will meet July 31st. My understanding is that the meeting tonight is to go through what the last year's results were of the bus transportation and what the projection is for next year. All right, and a recommendation on what to do. The school committee will not vote final action tonight. We're going to wait until the 31st to find out what the position of the committee board of selectmen is on the procurement of buses. If they can procure and not have to put this plan into action, they will gladly do it. If the position is that when buses will be procured, then they will have to meet at their next meeting and vote what they hear tonight as their plan. Which is pretty drastic.
It is.
So that's where we stand right now.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
The next thing on our agenda is the Community Preservation Financial Report.
Do you have one?
If you turn to page 4, then you just have a response from the town accountant giving you a 3-sentence update.
I had asked a member of the CPC that is knowledgeable about the status, if she was able to come tonight, and she had another commitment. So I was hoping, I know that the town accountant, he's working on this diligently, but I would still like to have CPC people, somebody come in and explain to us what's happening. Yes?
Madam Chair, it took us years to get to the point where the town accountant and the financial individual on the CPC were in agreement on numbers. How did we get back to ground zero?
Yes, Mr. Heath?
Once again, I'm sorry. Too many meetings is probably my problem. They shouldn't call me a slave. I went to the CPC's annual public hearing, and at that point, during the course of that meeting, their financial situation came up. All right, and the treasurer was unable to make a report that evening because there has been a good deal of confusion in the town's accounting office between the actual accounting office and at that time our contractor. And a number of double entries were made, et cetera, and it was at that point total confusion. And I wish to report it out that yes, there is, and there were no powers and Sullivan to straighten it all out. All right, but right now, my understanding based on that meeting, their statement was they could not issue a report because the numbers were incorrect in the accounting system.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
is that part of the management letter for FY11? I can't remember. Or was that generalized under one of the management letter items, points? Do you know, Frank? Or Mr. Heath?
It was,
My esteemed colleague, Mr. Heath?
I don't remember, sir.
they referred to communication several times in that.
That's the one they just did, the updated one.
Yes.
Which means we haven't made any progress, but I'm not saying that, but again, we get back to the original statement. I don't know who made it earlier. We continue to not learn from our mistakes, and that seems to be the theme.
But we do that well.
We are very good at it.
I'm Chair, if I may, my esteemed colleague, and I think that's one of the reasons why that report was written that way, because it was a lack of communication, right, between the contractor and the accounting department as to what was happening, and vice versa.
All right.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
There's a side item that is related to this. You know, the last time when there was a disconnect between the town accounting office and the town treasurer on resolving weekly or daily the difference in what the treasurer thought they had and what the accountant thought they had. And as the time went on, we found that that wasn't being done after we were told that it was going to be done. Somehow, some of these things that are important for CPC, whether you agree with it or not, there's a significant amount of money on the table. I don't even know if they're doing the daily reconciliation between the treasurer's office and the accountant's office, but I think it's a systemic issue of breakdown, not only between departments, but committees. This is, and I'm not blaming the accountant at all. The man has walked into something fine, but it's a systemic issue.
Well, I'd like to hear, I think we should hear from the CPC folks themselves.
Yeah.
I really do, because I don't want to sit here and we know that an individual spent an awful lot of time to bring the books in sync, a volunteer, and what has happened since, we don't know. That's why we need to have, I'll send out a strong request to get somebody from the CPC to come in and explain it next meeting, yes.
And we're just talking about this past year, because I thought that they were in sync. They were off by about $7,000 or $9,000 when I last had looked at CPC numbers about a year or so ago, before I was off the committee.
See
So
what
it's
happens when
just
you leave,
current-
it just went down to 2.
So is it just the current numbers that we're talking about? It's not the big picture numbers?
If I may,
I don't know.
it is the current numbers.
Okay.
Right, it's what's happened, what has transpired over the last 12 months. The net effect is it leaves the CPC without the ability to tell you how much is in each of their reserve accounts and their balances. So that's the problem.
So I would beg the indulgence of the committee, through you, Madam Chair, just to talk about a big picture of what's happening with CPC, and they will come in and give us the details, but I think we saw the synopsis, changes have been made. We obviously cannot make any recommendations because we don't know what current balances are. But we really need to think carefully, because this is going to be the sign for people to come out and wave the flag that we can get rid of CPC, those who do not want any additional taxes, or those who want to spend money and build playgrounds because now we can use it for recreational lands. So we could talk big picture without talking dollars with regard to the changes that have been made.
Well, I think the new legislation is moving.
Excuse me, Mr. Trudell, I didn't hear you.
I think the new legislation is giving them too many options.
Well,
I
Given
can't
that-
change that.
given that, I will ask to have CPC represented here at our next meeting, put them on the agenda. Yes? Okay. Okay, and has everyone read the legislation?
Yes.
I have too. So, hopefully we can update ourselves on that.
If I may.
Yes?
All right, my understanding, what they announced was there was only one article that would be coming forth. Evidently they're closed, so any of this legislation would not apply to any articles until we go into the spring.
Oh, okay.
So we'll see, they only have one grant application.
Okay. The audit status, Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah, I guess the real question was, when are they coming in and such. I spoke to town accountant today, as he's the one working with Powers and Sullivan on that. My understanding is that they would be in there in late November.
But they were going to try and squeeze us in along the way if they had.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. I can't really want to speak to that, because if it doesn't come to fruition, I don't want to be said that I promised that.
Can you put them on the schedule for next year to start in September, maybe, of next year? That way we've got a good year's notice?
Yeah, we can do that. One of the other things is Powers and Sullivan was burnt by us in the past by when our department, county department, said that they were ready for them to come in, and they had not been. So I would say we need to make sure that we prove ourselves really ready this year before they give us such a long time frame, if I will. But that's just my gut feeling. But I would definitely ask for it.
Bonnie?
I'm sorry, I understand what you're saying, so the departments weren't ready when Powers and Sullivan came in. I think it's kind of awkward at this moment, not having a permanent town administrator who should demand that of his department heads to be ready. So I think we're kind of in limbo right now.
Well, I'd like to see us officially get on a schedule for next year, for September. And if we can't get on a schedule, and I'd like to go on record as making that request, that we want them to start the audit and the town better be ready by September. And I think that's the job of our selectmen, our elected officials, to make sure that they get their house in order and make sure that we need to harp and harp and harp on this, because I think it's so important. Yes, Mr.
I don't mean to interrupt, I just want to speak.
Certainly.
Usual flashing is done. Last night's selectmen's meeting, they did vote on a motion to put together an audit committee. All right, and it was passed, by a 3-1 vote. And I know that we're going to be asked to put a member on there who has financial management or accounting background, not necessarily auditing. And they would be the kind of people that would monitor this kind of thing, setting quarterly reporting against the letter. Because it was, I believe the motion was to use the DOR and guidelines and to reduce consultation with Powers and Sullivan to set it up. Right, so that would be the first progress.
It's a 1-year term too, correct?
Pardon?
1 year?
It's 1 year, it's a 1-year term, and I understand it's from January to December, which if you really look at an audit, you don't really see your audit back until November.
Yeah.
So it doesn't do any good to go from, July 1st to June 30th, because then the people who were on the audit committee while the action was going on the fiscal year
Okay.
aren't there to receive the audit management letter, et cetera, or committee of progress. My other concern in this audit though is I want to know, we have the outstanding letter that says we are supposed to submit all our paperwork by November 1st.
Exactly.
Okay, this schedule, as we've said in the past, doesn't fit. I'm personally concerned with the fact of this latest letter. What's the impact of that letter on what happens if we don't make that November 1st date? I mean, will we be talking with the Department of Revenue to find out if we're going to get a waiver on that November 1st letter? Right, because that impacts our free cash, and last time we were threatened with the possibility of not receiving a quarterly state aid payment. And I don't want to find us on October 15th suddenly discovering that we've got a real serious problem.
I agree with you.
It's got a little thing on it?
Okay, we're gonna,
A ransom auction will be held after the meeting.
You know how old that is?
well, the,
It's blessed by the Pope, be careful with it.
so we are going to, would you suggest, Mr. Heath, I agree with you 100%, but we don't have anybody coming in till November, the end of November, and our deadline says that we're supposed to have our audit in by the 1st of November?
Did we not address this already with the acting town administrator? We asked him to work
Yes,
on
we
it?
did. He gave us the dates, and really, the audit is the audit is done for the selectmen. It's their audit. They're the ones who receive the management letter, and they're the ones who are responsible for the audit. They're the ones who are responsible for protecting the physical assets of the town, et cetera. So maybe our chair should send them a letter and say, what's going to happen, folks? Are we in jeopardy or aren't we? And if we're not, do we have it in writing that we're not?
That's a good point.
Well, this also means by getting these numbers in late November, we're not going to have a free cash number
No?
for a town meeting.
Great.
Which also means that when we start facing, town meeting in the fall is generally when we discuss the procurement of capital items. No free cash. It's going to be really interesting.
Very true. Very true.
Do we need to, I don't want to say force the issue, but bring a little more attention to it clearly with a letter to the Board of Selectmen?
That's
what
exactly what he just
I mean, is
said.
that, it,
Yes, I think we do.
can we do it?
You're safe now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're right, I am.
Yes. Do you have a question now?
I was just going to ask if there are other audit firms out there that we would entertain using at this point, or are we just wedded to Powers and Sullivan because they have been working with us so long, they know what's going on? Is that
I
practical?
don't think it's a matter of Powers and it's
very difficult to contract with a CPA firm this late in the schedule because they've already set up most of them. And I would suspect if we went with another firm, there's also that time of familiarization that.
The answer is yes, it makes the
And
most sense.
Forrest and Sullivan haven't really been with us all that long.
Long enough to set the basis and work from the basis, which is a lot cheaper than setting the basis and working.
That's true.
It doesn't sound to me as if it's, the problem is Powers and Sullivan. It sounds to me it's, the problem is in town hall, or the authority for setting their foot down and saying, this has to be done in a timely fashion.
Well, Mr. Andrews told us that he had them scheduled. Obviously, he didn't have them scheduled because we were on him about this. And he assured us that this was going to be, this was their schedule, they were coming in, and it was nothing more than a story. So,
Can I say?
yes.
I don't think that it's all on the town administrator. I believe that through the few years that they've been with us, they have an historical basis for when they had the information given to them. So they planned, and again, we're not here to lay blame. I'm just saying that if you have a historical perspective, they're not going to come in here in October when they're not going to have anything ready until for them to. So they naturally planned accordingly. But I'm not saying it can't be adjusted, but that's just their basis, and that's been our basis. We've had some turnover, we've had some things, but we just certainly need it all to work out this year. And again, other than short of us writing a letter, which is what do we have to take a vote on, I guess, that's probably our best bet, is to get it in front of the people that can actually make it happen.
Well, I've been here for 6 years and nothing has gone smoothly financially in 6 years. You too, Bonnie. You too, David. I have not seen anything go through financially smoothly. So I think we need to make a strong statement and go on record to make a strong statement. And I would entertain a motion to, or something.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sitting here reading it, which is about a hand up to the lips there.
I would like to make a motion, I guess, if that's where we want to go, to put in writing to the Board of Selectmen our concerns for moving the audit engagement, and this is where I'm going to run into a little problem, so feel free to help me out. The audit engagement up so that we can meet the, what deadline are we looking for?
November 1st.
November 1st deadline set by the Department of Revenue.
Well, and we need to find out what, our...
I'll second the motion.
For discussion? All right.
Okay. So we do need to find out what are we injecting here by not doing it, and the free cash, and then I think this is a serious conversation that needs to be taken, put in place. And I will solicit some help to write that letter.
She's looking at you, Frank.
I was looking at Maryland.
No, I think
Yeah.
I'm Maryland too.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
do we know, since I missed part of the discussion, that the town accountant will have the data ready? There's no sense of us writing a letter if we're not sure that the town accountant is going to be able to provide the numbers that they're looking for.
Well,
I think
that's,
that's our point.
Well, I understand that, Tony, but
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That's why we're writing the letter, because I think this is not just saying, hey, we need to schedule the audit. And that's why the letter has to be more in detail, because if this isn't ready, this isn't ready, this is ready, that doesn't matter if they come in or not. So our goal, I thought, was to put it in front of the selectmen and say, look, we need to be ready and this needs to happen so that we can meet this deadline. And if we don't meet the deadline, this is what could potentially happen. We can't say this is what's going to happen, because you know as well as I do, the state sometimes rattles a sword and then says, just kidding. But we need to, we need to tell them, lay out what needs to happen, or this is the consequences, or potential consequences. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying. That helps my understanding of what we're really seeking for the goal.
I mean, we don't need to be the one to set the schedule as far as setting the schedule. That's not our job, but to say, look, here's your situation and here's your potential consequences.
Marilyn, can I count on you to get together with possibly Frank and I to put this letter together?
Give me the
Because
facts and
he
all.
knows the deadlines better than.
If I may also too on this, I would remind everybody that our expertise on the year 2011's contract lapsed on June 30th. That's all our expertise from last year.
Excuse me, you want to say that again?
We had a contract, we had a contract with a firm, right, they did all our reports last year. Their contract was allowed to lapse on June 30th, so all our expertise from 2011 left. So, if we need, somebody needs to they need to get them back, so they help our town accountant be ready on time, and I guess maybe that's an option. I'm not
Okay.
advocating anything, I'm just saying, I want to remind everybody that all our expertise really has departed
Right.
I
as far
understand
as
that.
submissions to the state, and I think the selectmen have to take some action.
Okay,
So moving forward.
all right. Moving on. We keep that together. Municipal Maintenance Department overages.
Excuse me, Donna, I
Yes.
don't think the vote was taken on that motion.
Oh, no, we didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Rewind.
Thank you.
There's a motion sitting on the floor, did you see it?
I'll entertain a vote. Can I have, can we have a vote, all in favor of a letter being generated and sent to the selectmen regarding our concerns with the timetable of the audit and the timetable for our department heads to get their information together?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous.
It's a good thing we have Kelly over there watching
You
over
know,
us.
we're like a football team, and when we vote, we should vote simultaneously, like when you get to a huddle and everybody ready, break.
We're not a football team,
Okay.
we're a group of individuals.
But we're not
We
doing
vote
it, we're not in sync here.
Well, there's no formal method in which we're supposed to vote.
Expensive. 1, 2, 3.
Can I go back to another point, just for Bonnie's benefit on the CARE program?
It's on the speed page.
Well, you went and asked her?
Yes.
Maybe. CARE is reimbursed by the federal government.
Okay, including transportation?
They're checking on that part, but the CARE program.
Who was
is
over there texting, weren't you?
No, I was just thinking, and she could read my brain, and there she came through.
Some marriages work differently than others.
Yes.
Yes. A silent device.
All right, the Municipal Maintenance Department overages. Why didn't we bring this up again?
Isn't that what the FEMA thing was?
Yes. Well, yes.
Yeah, that's going to answer all the questions.
We don't have anything further
We
to
put the
go.
agenda, we worked together before we had that report. So.
Frank has been kind enough to put together a tentative FinCom meeting schedule, 2/12 and 2/13. Did everybody get a copy? No?
I didn't.
No,
Okay. I will, can I give it to you, Phil? Can I give it to you and we can get it out to
You
everybody?
broadcast it.
Thank you.
You have that as an attachment, Frank, that you can send to all of us?
I was going to send it to Kelly, and I forgot, so I'll have her send it for you.
Yeah.
Or did we send it out?
No, I didn't know.
No, I didn't get
Have
it.
Kelly issue it again.
Yeah, Kelly can, we'll get that out.
The highlights for the fall, though, you want to point those out?
Yes.
Is 4 meetings, we'll have 2 meetings in August, the 8th and the 22nd, we did last year. 4 meetings in September, which is basically every week, and then the first 3 weeks of October, because we're getting ready for town meetings. Municipal.
And then,
Then I'll go on vacation.
These are tentative, these are always
you're
tentative
always on
dates.
vacation.
These are the tentative dates. And that will send you.
So our next meeting will be August the 8th?
Yeah,
Yes.
and the 22nd. And then all 4
Then all
Wednesdays,
four- all
Wednesdays in
four.
September, and 3 Wednesdays.
3 in October.
Remember, this is the tentative one, so you mark it on your calendar in case we need them, because as we get closer to town meeting, we can cover all these warrant articles, we won't have to meet, except to discuss the audit.
Madam Chair, on the schedule, I thought last year we put it out on the FinCom website also, one of the meetings.
I don't recall that. I thought I didn't do that. It may have been put on.
Well, it wouldn't be a bad idea if we
I
could do
didn't
that.
do it.
Yeah.
I didn't do it.
I didn't either.
The reason I didn't do it is because then people fight with you if you decide not to have one. This is a tentative schedule.
I do
That's true.
input meetings on the website,
Mm-hmm.
so if this is what we're gonna do, I can.
Well, that's just a tentative schedule, like Frank
That's
said.
it.
Maybe we wouldn't bother to do that yet.
Well, I don't really care. I'm just thinking that if somebody goes to the FinCom website,
Mm-hmm.
as long as it's in lavender, it says tentative.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah, that's not a
suspect
bad
they're
idea.
lost if they get to our website.
Yeah,
We could always post monthly, okay?
yeah. We could put it out monthly.
That'll be
Everybody
fine.
knows what's coming in the next month.
Do we have any liaison reports?
I want to go last, but I have,
Well, Sam's not here tonight.
oh, good.
He's on vacation. I don't know where Tom is. Anybody heard from Tom?
Don't know.
Dominic, I haven't heard from him either. Okay, so Sam's got the school. The capital planning would be you, Mr. Heath.
Yeah, before we do that, though, we did jump on, I don't know, it was the future reading discussions of pension and health care. We were talking about that.
Yes.
That was,
Okay.
if I remember right, that
H,
was why
that's
we
right.
wanted to have a meeting in August. We wanted to invite those people in now.
Yes, can we set them up on our August schedule?
Are we talking Plymouth County?
Yes,
Yes,
Yes.
and the health.
and the health plan.
I
Plymouth
thought,
County.
and my feeling, I don't know, everyone else did contribute, my feeling was, we don't know enough about the plans. It's great to come in and tell us what their investment strategy is, but I don't think I have a clear understanding of what the employees are expected to contribute, what the town's expected to contribute. All right, both for what's currently, the current new employees and new employees and all that.
Mhm.
Same thing on the healthcare side. All
Mhm.
right, and, the reserve becomes a question as well.
What are the dates that we have in August there? Kelly?
The 22nd.
Can you try and get these folks in for the 8th or the 22nd of August? So we can put them on the agenda?
The 8th, not the 18th. Okay, sorry, misheard.
8th, yeah.
And my suggestion would be is that that's the only items on the agenda.
Are you writing this down?
No.
Oh, I know.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Through Dick Carlson last year, I went to one of those Plymouth County meetings. I think I reported to the FinCom on that. But it was a breakfast, most of either your treasurers or town administrators went to that. So we got permission to go, we went there. And I found it interesting that someone from town went there with another person, that was fine. They changed the law that they could now put cost of living on above $12,000. So that meant that this year, they would add cost of living to the first $13,000 of your pension. And of course, we know they're gonna vote next year, make the cost of living to the first $14,000. The point that I found interesting was the selectmen didn't know that they were going off to this Plymouth County Retirement Board, nor did we. And I felt that maybe there should have been some guidance issued and possibly a report that will come back to us. And I'm not sure who's supposed to be doing the reports, but there's a definite conflict of interest when I have the town administrator or some other financial person going to the Plymouth County Retirement Board in voting whether they pick up cost of living raises. I mean, it doesn't sound like much. We were talking on $1,000, we're talking, what, $35 a year. If you do this cumulatively and you keep raising the base, I mean, it just seems to me that it's not right that people that are interested in their own pensions
Voting.
are voting on this stuff.
That's what they do in the government. That's what everybody in the government does.
Well, I understand that, but you know, for the record, I don't think it's correct.
I would dare say it's also kind of under the radar because he's not sure anyone's aware. At least when
Exactly.
Congress votes their own raises, we get to watch them on
Yeah.
CNN. But this is just one of those things that's happening at a breakfast meeting and no one knows it's going on.
Mr. Slavin, did you have a question? Did you have your hand up? Oh, yeah.
Ray wants
I'm not
to
to
start.
stretch out like this anymore.
Oh, you're probably going like this.
Thought it was,
Right.
it must be a symbol.
Right, Derek, will you make
Making a
that
right
right?
turn.
I will, I didn't write it, I did put it in.
I know, I just wanted to see if you were awake there. Okay.
Does it answer phone calls?
No,
Oh, okay.
can't afford that part of it.
It's a computer that answers calls.
Okay, now does anyone have a liaison report? Mr. McDonald?
Can I really go? Wow.
No, you can go, thank you.
Just for the record, they opened Spinney. It's now the part of the town, or allegedly part of the town, at this point. So from the library standpoint, that's really all I have from them. There's been some discussion about the trustees, the library trustees' money, as to whatever it's called. I can't think of it.
Foundation?
Well, no, the foundation and the Friends have money, but the trustees also had seed money from that settlement. And discussions of how they're going to be spending their money to assist the library this year. So I'm hoping to get a better understanding of where they're at in the budget situation and who's helping what, so that maybe it'll help us a little bit to understand what issues they're going to face this year. Don't look at me like that.
Okay.
And the second one I have is with the IT, which I'm sure we're all dying to hear our liaison report with the IT. As you might imagine, the big issue is virtualization. I know that's really hard to believe. The police have migrated most of their servers and applications to the new equipment. We still have the phone system, communication server, mail server, and transfer the domain on the server side, trying to figure out how to get the thin clients to work now. He's having, I can shortcut this and tell you that out of the $400,000 that was approved at town meeting, $398K have already been spent. $120,000 worth of licenses above that have been deferred to 13 and 14. And until last week, they had not heard or seen the vendor since last March. And now the vendor's looking for another $49,000 we have not paid to them and would like a conference call. So looks like the total now is up to $567,000 versus the budget or the approved amount of $400,000. And also, because it is the IT, the IT person currently has 263 open support calls. Just can't keep up with the demand. Vendor's not doing the migration, no proper training and no resources I can give you at any time frame for the completion of it. So in other words, it's a giant black hole right now. On top of that, for the FY13 budget, these items have already been cut out of the budget. The vacant tech support position has been cut out. Training has been cut out. Web filtering and annual support and licensing has been cut out. The annual maintenance for the old AS400, which I'm not sure that's a big deal. We're trying to find out more. Equipment repairs, the annual software support and license has been cut out, and backup execution annual licensing has been cut out. So we probably have some issues in the IT department, and whether anybody believes it or not, when that system goes down, we're going to have real problems throughout the town.
If I might. Does it appear, I mean, I'm not surprised at the cuts we've made. We've saved so much money by cutting people and licenses that it will be a total catastrophe when it does happen. Matt's been underwater now since I've been on the finance committee.
Right.
263 calls is probably a light load at this point for the man. Is anybody in the administration looking at this issue? To your knowledge, that
Wow. I know there are people looking at.
Official knowledge.
I know there's some people looking at the bigger issue from another level above our administration, but I think that it's been brought to the attention. I'll make sure that it's brought to attention. But what concerns me about this is that this is one of those that say, okay, we're going to take all this from you. In the meantime, we're going to saddle you with this. So we may have taken $100,000, $200,000 from him, but we just hit him with $200,000 more. And in my opinion, money we probably shouldn't have hit him with, so he's not even treading water anymore, it's coming in over his head.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this only, as far as I'm concerned, affirms that we have continued to raise, under everything we can to meet our budget numbers. And we are taking the extremely short-sighted positions in order to meet that. I've said for years that the brick wall is coming to us. I truly believe it's coming to us at a far faster speed, because if this all hits this year, I don't care, we don't have the money to cover it.
And we're you know, you're a military guy, you remember the old expression of which organ runs the body overall, okay, but,
Even I know that one.
well, but the
I
issue
don't really
here,
want to explain.
I don't either.
it's not that you wanted to explain, but the
Not
point
on
is,
tape.
when somebody sat down to, and I'm not, again, blaming, when somebody sat down to cut the budget, they cut where they felt like cutting as opposed to where they should have cut, because by saying that's not necessary over here, what they're gonna find out is that is necessary, because there's other things in here I didn't read, and you know, we have phone issues. I mean, everything ties into the server. You got one guy sitting on top of a powder keg at this point, because they're not getting any training, the virtualization is not complete, and it doesn't look like it's going to be complete anytime soon, and there's a whole lot of money invested in this. In the meantime, he's trying to keep up with the calls, and he's not able to do that, and they cut his budget even further, so now he's got maintenance issues and equipment issues, so this is not a department you want to screw up.
Not to cut you short here.
Oh, go ahead.
I think
I'm tired of
I think
talking.
there's an awful lot going on in the IT department, and I think that everything is going to surface. It's ugly, and it's
Yes.
going to be uglier. But I believe I think we as a town are headed in the right direction. We have selectmen that are working together. We have a FinCom that's working with the selectmen now, and hopefully we can bring to the community a good, strong leader as a town administrator. That it's going to take us some time to dig ourselves out of what the former one got us involved in. But I think we will prevail. I know we will.
I do too. The only problem that I have is we have 110% of our eggs in one individual. He has been, if I may say, out on the end of the limb, needing an assistant now for some 4 or 5 years. I sure hope some town doesn't come along and offer him a better package, because if that happens, don't worry about us making any progress.
No, we just have to do what we have to do. And I'm sure that everyone in this town, in the town hall, respects what Mr. Underhill does. I mean, he is. And we've set ourselves in a very difficult position, depending on one person. I mean, he could hit by bus tomorrow and we're, God forbid, but I'm just saying.
Win the lottery. We prefer to say he could win the lottery in the Caribbean.
But I think it is what it is right now, and I think there's a lot that's going to be surfacing, and a lot has surfaced. And I think we're just gonna have to meet it head on in a positive and work together and try to get these situations resolved.
Can we go on to the next subject?
Yes. How about, yes,
Other than one employee?
yes, sir.
Wait, there's some fill-ins on this, right? Because there's some items that occurred last week or so, which are pretty important. Go to the school committee, the same wasn't around, so we weren't able to get information, but I had occasion to meet with Dr. Lopez the other day, in case of the buses. And evidently, we received an additional $105,000 state aid. All right, and also there was a bill passed by the legislature which will provide $115,000 basically for the out-of-district transportation, however, it goes to the general fund. So the question is, can we or can't we get it to, can he or can he not get it to the revolver? So that's good plus $220,000. However, we were notified by the federal government the other day that based on the 2010 census, all right, our number of students who are categorized as poverty, all right, has dropped because, and actually it's gone up. What the difference is that they do not count homeless nor foster children in the federal numbers. The net effect was is the school department is losing $150,000 for Title I monies. So the plus 220 is now down to 70, and as they say every day, it's here's a plus, here's a minus. So there's some fluctuation there. They do intend to appeal that. On capital planning, we did have a meeting the other day. Finally, we were able to get one. They were able to get one because I arrived, and the meeting was pretty quick because there was no money. However, there was legislation, there was an article passed in town meeting in last October which said that the meal tax money would go to purchasing capital items. That got lost in the legislative committee, which reported last night at the selectmen's meeting. It was going to be written, resubmitted, and hopefully, it will get before the legislature very quickly. That may present a problem now, because the way that reads is that meal tax money has to go for capital items. If you remember back to the budget, those monies were used as part of the revenues to which the rest of the budget was applied to. So the day they pass it and the governor signs it, then we have a hole in the budget, probably equivalent to some $300,000. The other item on water pollution control is that it was reported at the selectmen's meeting last night that the article passed at town meeting was stale and therefore has to be represented to the fall town meeting.
What do you mean the article passed the town
We will
meeting?
not introduce it to the legislature, it died. It's stale.
The sewer commissioners?
Yes.
It was
Yes, there was an
2010.
article on that.
What?
It was conveniently not followed up.
We could ask Mr. Salmon if he could just give us the details. If he
Yes.
wishes to respond, it would be helpful because he chased it down.
Yes, could you enlighten us, Mr. Slavin?
He explained it so well last night, maybe he'll repeat that. We're in great shape.
See, the article was passed in October of 2010. Probably got sent out to Senator Pacheco's office, I'd say January of 2011. Just so everybody understands, I'll do this quickly. A special act, which requires approval by the legislature, is the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen, not the town clerk. So the Board of Selectmen's office would send with the town clerk's certified vote, has to go with it, to both the House and the Senate. Normal procedure is for what they call a home rule petition. Our Senator Pacheco, his office is the one that introduces the bill first, and then Susan Gifford would introduce it second. So on the sewer commissioner issue, it went to Senator Pacheco's office. There was questions on the language going back and forth for right up until probably February of this year. And basically in July, the question came up, I forget whether it was Sandy or someone else got up, there might have been Frank's question. And basically they kind of looked back at me, and I got assigned to find out what was going on. So I went in, I called Mary, which is an aide for Senator Pacheco's office, and asked something what was going on, where was it? Because I knew it hadn't been filed, because there's no bill number. I've been given different reasons, back and forth. I have some email trails which show that Mark Andrews did inform the town clerk to expect to put it on the ballot this past April. So there obviously has been positive stuff back and forth. Bottom line was, I got a copy of what they had submitted. I looked with Rich Bowen at the questionable words. Someone had added a word here and there, never submitted by us, never submitted by Rich. It took me all of 15 minutes to clean it up, correct it, sent it back. House counsel went through it. It was actually the Senate counsel. All done. Mary went ahead and sent it off to what they call the Senate, the clerk of the Senate, and the clerk of the House. We were all set. We thought we were going to get this in and done. This was like last week, Tuesday. I got a call, I believe it was Wednesday morning, from Mary. The Senate clerk is not going to allow us to submit the bill. And the answer is it's stale, is the word they used, because it's gone on for 2 years, time frame, different excuses, reasons, whatever, but I have a letter from the Senate clerk saying no. So it was kind of a surprise. So what we've done is we're going to resubmit the bill to town meeting. Should get approved, hopefully, easily. It will go fairly quickly back to the House and Senate. Susan Gifford has made the decision, she's no longer going to wait for the Senate. She will file bills on her own. Changing process. We're also going to write this particular article a little different. Last time we wrote it up, that had to go back before for townwide approval before we could go to election. We're going to delete that particular part of the piece. So what that will do is, if it gets through the Senate in the time frame, we would be able to put it on the ballot for next April. So technically, we're almost at the same point we would be at anyways, because this would have not gone to the ballot till April. So it's fixed, it's done. I don't really care who did what. It doesn't matter to me anymore.
No, because they're out of office.
It doesn't matter anyways. I don't care. There's people currently in office, whatever. You can point fingers everywhere. It doesn't matter. So we're just going to fix it. I take the responsibility to get it rewritten. I'll submit it from the Board of Selectmen. I'll basically run it through to I'll hand deliver probably to both offices. We'll get it done. Just so you understand, the meals tax had the same situation. Never been filed. If we hadn't bothered to check a little closer, August 31st, that would have been dead also. We had to redo the whole thing again. I was able to get a hold of Heather from Susan Gifford's office, because I was tracking both. They sent me a copy of what they had. Senator Chico's office said they never received anything from the town on the meals tax. Representative Gifford's office had everything. Again, I don't care. We know it was sent. I have copies of all the letters from both. Again, Susan said she was going to file. Heather basically had House Counsel send me what they were going to basically submit to the House Clerk to get it going. I don't know what happened, but what they had written down was the actual original motion, if people remember the town meeting. And if you remember, that motion was modified on town floor, because we had, I think I wrote the actual motion, the whole piece at that time. It was 50-50 split between the town and the school.
Yeah.
And I believe, I remember Steve Holmes, selected at the time, changed that on the floor to just go to the town. It wasn't broken out at all. So I basically had to rewrite back to House Counsel what the actual amended motion that was approved. I also wrote the actual amendment language and submitted it to House Counsel. House Counsel called back a little confused about just some things. I spent about 20 minutes on the phone with him. We went through it. It's all set. He submitted it back to Heather. Heather was going to bring it downstairs, waiting for the final answer to actually get it going. So it looks like that should go through. So we could see that possibly within the next 30 to 60 days going through and being done.
Well, thank you.
And what that says basically is, it says capital items. It doesn't say new or whatever. So it says capital items.
Well, thank
And
you.
what it also means is it says the bill is effective the day that the governor signs it. So the day the governor signs it, from that day on, any money that goes at 0.75% goes strictly for capital items. It stops going into the general fund. That's it.
But, I'm sorry, but originally when it was written, I don't even remember what fiscal year we were in, but we said it would be retroactive for that fiscal year.
The way the bill was written, it doesn't become active until the governor signs it as a special law. That's the way it went. It was always, when it was written and put in there, it actually was to be in effect once it's signed. Because there was no way to do it to retroactively go back, because they were taking money and using it for the budget.
Okay.
The question was, would it be available in 2012 if it got downtime, which we thought it would be. And the answer was it was really going to be active when it actually got done.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
seems to me there was a little turmoil on the budget at that point. And the next day, the town administrator put $432,000 into his budget. Absorbed all that money. My memory faulty?
You're talking about the original, way back when it first passed.
Yeah.
Right, he immediately took it in, it was 300 some odd thousand,
Oh,
split
okay.
between the police department and one other area.
Maybe I have a chance.
Spring of 2000, spring of 2011.
Yes,
Yes.
okay, and then this last time, it was just budgeted as a straight revenue, state aid, it was included in the state aid number.
Well,
So it will affect the budget for the town sometime probably as early as the next 60 days.
could leave us another hole.
Leave you in the hole maybe $300,000.
Madam Chair, if I may though, if it is worded as a capital item, all right, I believe that allows us to use it to leases and to borrow against.
Yeah, yeah.
To borrow by items, which means we get more for our buck. If it was just capital equipment per se or whatever, then the money would have to be spent in full as a straight out purchase, which is not the way to go.
I was meant to ask you how the ambulance thing went, or is going.
Can't answer that right now. It's being worked.
Not in the capital plan, capital planning committee is still scratching their head trying to figure out what to do. That's the only thing I can
Okay.
speak to.
That's fine.
It's in the hands of the selectmen.
Pardon?
It's in the hands of the selectmen right now.
With the ambulances?
Just, Walmart, it's
Okay, I
it's
understand.
part of, it's part of the sewer mitigation right now.
Okay.
That's all we can say.
Do you want an update on the election?
Yes.
Nothing passed.
Should be a surprise.
It didn't take very
Really?
long.
That's the update I just got.
What time is it?
It is,
When you go to the
8/11.
business, I have one.
Is that all? That's
Okay.
all? I understand the vote. How big were the votes? Because I heard the votes.
I don't know, nothing passed is what I heard.
Well, I asked
I
Larry earlier, he said he had voted, and it was like 200 and some people.
230.
When I went down to vote somewhere around 10, 48 people had gone through precinct 6. I mean,
We have to figure people work, and then they're gonna vote later, so.
I know, but we would have figured that the old cadre would have come out and forced by the bus.
Well,
I don't know.
okay, is there any new business? Yes, Mr. Trudeau?
Could we put for next meeting a discussion of a 5-year plan and presenting it to the selectmen as an item of discussion?
5-year plan for what? Isn't it in the charter? For the capital plan?
There's, no, not just capital plan, there's a requirement that the town
Yeah.
administrator submit a 5-year
5-year plan.
plan, all right, with explanations.
By what day?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I want it on the agenda if we could,
Mhm.
is I have yet to see the Board of Selectmen show any interest in the budget process, to my knowledge, and they have never come to have a discussion with us of what's going on in the various departments. Now, this is some 5 years. Now, we're supposed to go through the Board of Selectmen to deal with the town administrator. Okay, I can understand, based on some previous efforts of individuals, that that's solid. But I'm a little discouraged to think that I don't see that the selectmen are being proactive with the budget. And that makes me nervous, since we're facing some pretty ugly times.
Do you?
Yes.
Do you remember our joint meeting with them? One of the first things I brought up was the fact that we had a 5-year plan in front of us, and I don't remember what the deficit was, but it was an outrageous 5-year cumulative deficit. And I brought it up, and I didn't hear, there was not one reply from any of the selectmen, not one. Do you remember that? I remember it, it's on the, I'm sure it's taped.
It was like, it's either our first or our second year, and it was Dan Cheever.
Paulson, Dick,
Yeah.
That's a different.
Dominic, that was a 5-year.
Oh, this
worst-
is last year.
But yeah, best case, worst case scenario that you guys did, yeah. That was good too, you guys did a good job.
It's a different one
Yeah.
from what you're talking about the one that the town administrator filed with the clerk.
Well, we could put it on for the agenda. However, it might be just a little premature where we don't have a town administrator.
Not saying, but I'd like to have that on the agenda so we could have a meaningful discussion about it. Whether we do anything with it or not is,
Okay.
it probably is premature, Donna, but
No, absolutely.
I
Put
just
on
like
the
to see us
agenda.
focus something on that.
Okay. Anything further to discuss?
Just a question on the status of getting a new town administrator and how that will work out with the budget process for next year.
Well, it's moving very quickly, actually doing interviews. And the committee will be making a recommendation to the selectmen. I would gather by early next week.
Are you recommending one, or are you recommending 4 or 5, or?
I couldn't even tell you that, I don't know. The selectmen have asked us to not to bring forth more than 5.
Okay, that's,
And I signed a confidential agreement, so I can't go any further than that. Yes,
New business?
yes.
I'll make this very quick. Last night, as Frank mentioned, first piece of the Board of Selectmen starting to get active in the financial matters of the town to do our job that's required as for guidance and the other pieces that we're supposed to be doing. We'll be asking at the next meeting for a monthly report, 3 weeks after each month, for revenues and expenses. We'll be asking for the actual current revenue expense for each month, cumulative, and also to list the proposed appropriate budget for the year for those each expense item. We'll be able to sit there and then look at things and be able to come up with questions of what was happening, provide guidance. That was number one. Number two is the audit committee, which basically followed its, I think Powers and Sullivan, I believe, went back to 2009, the DOR was there. I contacted Jared Curtis from the DOR because we've had issues, and I thought it'd be nice to sit there and work with them on this. They basically gave me three sources to look for. I wrote up the audit committee, the function, the members, the timeframes, everything was accepted last night by 3 out of the 4 selectmen. I apologize, Selectman Holmes did actually intend to be here, and I think you'll find I'm going to think that he's going to try to attend more of the meetings. His health is preventing him from doing that. We actually spoke about 7 days ago about him coming in. What we need, what I'm requesting you here in his place is that you need to select one member from the Finance Committee who has either accounting, auditing, or financial management experience, because one of the 3 members of the audit committee is from the Finance Committee. And it's that you pick that person, we don't. There'll be one member from the Board of Selectmen, there'll be one member at large, I'm hoping to get it up on the website the next day or so. That person has to have the same type of accounting, auditing, or...
Is this going to be a daytime meeting, or is it going to be evening meeting?
This would be whatever works for 3 people. It's going to have to be figured out. Can't sit there and tell you it's going to be a day or a night, because when you get 3 people together, they've got to work out what's going to work for the 3.
Mr. McDonald?
what? I don't have a problem if it's a night meeting. Don't have a problem. But if it's a day meeting, I think you have to look at,
You know, we're limited to Sam, and as far as financial,
there's only 3 of us.
I have a minor in accounting, but it's a real minor.
Well, practice.
Experience too. Bonnie's an accountant right now.
Yeah.
Don't let him rope you in, buddy. He's trying to use that.
I don't have a problem doing it if it's at night, but that's fine if someone else, if
Well,
it's
I'm
a...
going to officially appoint you right now, and if you go as a member of the audit committee, and if the meetings can't, I hate to put it, his wife will kill me if I ask anything more of him.
My wife will kill you if you ask too much more. So, my wife's a lot meaner than
I'm
his.
not worried about it.
Oh, okay, so,
Just to point it out, have an alternate in place. That's all.
Are you the designate from the Board of Selectmen?
We have not voted yet. I got that through last night. That's the first
Okay.
piece of the puzzle.
do we want to take a vote on this? Or do we need to take a vote on this?
No.
At this point?
By the
You're the chair.
Okay.
The term is 1 year. It's
That's like a dictatorship.
It's 1 year,
January through December 31st, so
exactly.
Halfway done.
the first term will end December 31st.
All right.
Yeah.
And then you can ask somebody else to be appointed.
But you're not going to be happy with what an audit committee does. Remember what an audit committee
Oh, I know.
does not examine the books. What it does is it looks at the process of the audit process.
And it sees how we're performing with the management. That's all.
Yes, that's all it does.
If
Careful.
He won't be happy with that either.
No,
Member Heath has a copy of the draft, I believe, of the audit committee, the makeup and what the policy, what the instructions are.
Okay,
We can forward that over to...
Thank you. okay,
because I went so far as to put it all together as a complete package.
thank you. Thank you. Councilman Slavin? Yes, thank you.
Are we good?
Motion to adjourn.
Next meeting,
the next meeting,
It's August 8th.
Approve minutes?
minutes,
We
we
didn't
didn't
have
do
minutes
minutes
to
today. We didn't,
Yeah, we did that
Okay,
before we
then-
got here.
the next meeting is August, what is it, Kelly?
That might be better.
August 8th, okay. And you send that all right to everybody? Okay, August 8th. August 8th, and, I'll be in touch, and I'd like to see some, if anybody hears from Tom, I'd like to know where he was tonight, and
We vote?
Dominic too.
No, we
No,
haven't
we
had
haven't
a
voted
second
to
yet.
adjourn. We haven't had a
Second.
second.
So now you can go.
All those in favor of adjournment? Aye.
No, I pose no.
Thank you.